Memory transcription subject, Chief Hunter ISIF, Arxer Rebellion Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, March 5, 2137. When Vizith referred to Arxer today as no longer people, I decided the visitation was a lost cause. Secretary-General Zhao's directive to liberate Milo would be my focus. We'd have to stumble into morality the old-fashioned way, through trial and error. The humans could guide us down the roads of sophistication and ethics, with the principled backbone that held Earth together in the wake of the raid. As much as I loved Felra, allowing her to dictate my beliefs and behaviors was neither fitting nor desirable. The first phase to bring down the Kolshan Empire was loosening their hold on the Dosur world, and thereby sending my friend home. I decided to leave Felra with a human garrison at their fledgling colony in Mazik space, called Liberty's Bastion. It was unsafe for her to come with us to a vicious battle, when there was a non-zero chance of us being killed in action. A fine Arxer commander led by example, proving their mettle and relishing the opportunity for a contest of strength. Even if we had been relaying orders from far off, I thought it wise to keep my mind tactically sharp. I couldn't afford to worry about whether Felra wanted Alexei's beef jerky, while plasma beams were sizzling around us. The Terran guards would be more disciplined without the cute rodent around too. I had faith that they could conduct themselves well under peril. I observed the trusted Arxer I'd called onto the bridge, filling in vital stations, and considered what this meant for my legitimacy. 40,000 ships. That's the number the humans gave me, for the original force that seized Milo. I gazed out the viewport at the fleet I commanded. The thick armor of Arxer warships merited respect, alongside the punishing twin plasma guns that could skewer an opposing vessel. The rotund belly of our vessels broke up the otherwise angular build. Missiles were stuffed into the underside, as we shared the affinity for toting explosives with the Terrans. A traditional Federation ship would have cowered at the sight of our firepower, but the secret fleet of the Kolshans had an answer for all of our inventions. Standing aboard a craft of the aforementioned make, I felt woefully exposed. Coordinating disruptions against Dominion targets was one thing. They weren't expecting resistance, and they didn't have any tools at their disposal that we couldn't predict. Waging a battle against a superior enemy, with the ragtag armada at my disposal, was daunting. Proper warships didn't comprise the entirety of my force, as we had to rely on anything with a drive that fell into our jaws. The Terrans had parted with some smaller or obsolete craft they had no use for, which did little but pad our space-worthy ranks. Stolen Arxer transports, retrofitted with guns, were lacking in maneuverability, firepower, and armor. The classic, intimidating warships were the few that captains had been bribed into stealing. The other ship classes were designed with the intent of bringing soldiers to the ground to take a planet, not for exchanging blows with an advanced fleet of drones. Zhao had promised to support us, so I was hoping humanity had sent something substantial to our aid. We needed any assistance we could get. Taking serious losses might as well be total defeat, with our limited numbers. The strategies I devised would also need to be good enough to outfox the Kolshans. Chief Hunter, there's an incoming transmission from the Yodel technocracy. Shall I read it? Alexei Bondarenko asked. I glanced up from my holodisplay. Please do. The humans have requested that we aid you in retaking Milo. We have been amassing an armada since the Battle of Earth, with aid from Terran engineers, and feel that these vessels are ready for deployment. 2,000 newly minted ships will warp in just behind your position. We'll advance on your signal, and see how our weaponry fares in action. So this is the first battle for these Yodel ships, crewed fully by Yodel, without human intercession, yes? This is how Zhao interpreted me asking for assistance. The tail end of the message says that more help is on the way, sir. A growl rumbled in Kaisel's throat at the sensor station. We all know how well the prey wage war. Our number are barely above the 5-digit range. If the humans expect us to push forward, uncertain we can create a decisive edge, we must rethink our strategy. Yes, I appreciate your input, Kaisal. I trust you to preside honorably over your station. Humans, do you have any ideas of what this other help might look like? I cannot feel confident in an aiding force's abilities when it's all militaries of former Federation members. Lisa Reynolds glanced up from her briefing report. I've been in touch with my UN contacts. As I understand it, the Durerton homogeneity are not responding, even to sapient coalition parties that aren't us. It's possible that they're ignoring us, but given their involvement in the assassination plot, it's suspected that Calqua is under siege. A show of force, a warning. Nikonas may have been in league with Gisnell, but his death changes little. I would not be surprised if the Durerton incurred the full wrath of the Federation. Even with their so-called shield, they stand little chance against the Shadow Fleet. I agree, and I don't know what they were thinking. All I know is they were livid about having their free thought brainwashed away. Humanity, despite our differences, we would likely bail the Durerton out if they asked. With their hatred for us, they would sooner see their world burn than invite predators into their territory. Why do you side with, and help, the very races that despise you? Kaisal demanded. I agree with the runt. My nostrils flared, as the Yodels promised ships arrived on cue. Human empathy could be directed to undeserved places, at times. If the Federation weren't a greater threat, and it were possible to secure Earth's obliteration, I hazard a guess that the Durerton would do so without question. Oleg shrugged. We need more ships fighting for us and less ships fighting against us. Simple. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. The Durerton have unusual motives, but humanity always holds out hope of a species warming to us. We didn't want to fight everyone like this, Lisa said. Look at all that's happened. The Dosur have been occupied for months, for the crime of befriending us. We have to break this stalemate here and now. No matter what, we have the human forces that are deadlocked here, in the system, holding the line as we speak. What we've got isn't even a third of the total size of their fleet, but it has to be enough to turn the tide. I suppose it does, Oleg, I sighed. Thank the Yodel for their aid, and patch them into our comms. We'll see very soon if they're at all competent. Yes, sir. The Yodel vessels were visible on the viewport, and had a different aesthetic from any craft I'd seen before. There was some mild displeasure on the rebellion's channels over integrating with herbivore forces. The technocracy's commanders seemed capable of mobilizing craft into formation, though it was their combat readiness we all doubted. If the supposed reinforcements turned tail and fled when the gunfire commenced, I'd have some scathing remarks for Zhao once this was over. It was my hope that the humans knew what they were doing. If the Terrans hadn't proved themselves to my men at FTL, I suspect I'd hear more objections. After that demolition, saving our hides, the UN could put a Scifi in charge of the Armada and receive only grumbles from our people. Humanity has earned our trust. Oleg told me that humanity was involved in designing these vessels, which meant the Yodel warships could be more devious than they seemed at first glance. The strange shapes and features of the unknown classes suggested something was up with them. Conspiracy-loving Bondarenko adjusted his glasses, seeming to read a message on the comm station. Kaisel's posture stiffened by the sensors, and I parsed that our other assistants had arrived. My tail lashed with expectancy, waiting for one of those two to fill me in on the new development. 1,000 new contacts on screen, ID'd as human drones, Kaisal announced. Oleg scratched his chin scruff. Can confirm. I've received a communique with the info needed to relay commands to the drones. They're human, but we've entrusted them to your overarching directives. That's not as many as I'd hoped Earth would send, but I suppose you have little left to give, I mused. Very well. Place them on the front lines, and forward our planned course. The human drones deciphered the gist of my plan, and maneuvered their way to our leading edge. I could see that the Kolshan occupiers had detected our arrival, though they couldn't afford to break off from their current engagements. A lapse in the deadlock line would allow for the Terran drones in system, already pressing, to make headway. A worrisome issue crossed my mind, as I watched opposing beams traverse wide swathes of space. With the only sizable manned contingents being from my rebellion and the Yodel, which foot soldiers would clear Milo of enemy troops? If we liberate the system, I hope the humans will supply ground forces. Arxer landing will be perceived as a raid, and I wouldn't expect herbivore soldiers like the Yodel to be able to drive out any trained military. My focus was on executing the battle plan I'd devised, when my skeptical commanders relayed an openly disdainful explanation to the Yodel. The herbivores acted as if they understood. It had been conveyed in terms suited for a toddler, since that was about where the Federation's military competency stacked up. Despite the disadvantages we faced, I had to remember that this was for Felra. My best friend's people were subjugated, and while she never complained, I knew that had to weigh on her mind. The Arxer rebellion commanders followed my orders without question, with the obsequiousness and reverence owed to a chief hunter. It was simpler to mingle with my people without Felra miring my image, but the cruel acts I'd committed in the past hadn't escaped my underlings' memory. After witnessing my interactions, they'd seen defective behavior that didn't align with that history. I had to prove that I could be a respected commander without cruelty. It was not just about retaining their loyalty, but also being able to interact with other Arxer as equals. Vizith had reminded me that true shamefulness stemmed from not acting empathetic enough. We're keeping our strategies as simple as can be. Approach the skirmish line from a wide angle, and split the Kolshians' attention, I ordered. With any luck, it'll disorder their formation, and give the Terran forces already present a chance to break through for the kill. Kaisal was busy highlighting each Yodel ship on the sensors. If these prey-crewed vessels can't commit to a simple flanking pass, they're dead weight. I know. I'm not counting on the Yodel to do much more than draw fire off of us, which is fine by me. Onward. In strict formation, the fleet careened to the outskirts of the action, and coasted in for a bird's-eye view of the Kolshian forces. Thousands of automatons were warding off the primates, having kept the battle well outside Milo's sanctum. The hum of our engines in the floor was tame now, but we were ready to burn hard to swoop across our foe's exposed side. Our weapons station was locked and loaded, as soon as we got within optical range of the enemy fleet. I strapped into the commander's chair, in case the inertial dampers were pushed too far during combat. The enemy drones definitely spotted us, because the nearest elements pivoted toward us to prepare for an onslaught. An AI's omnidirectional view trumped even the ranging periphery of herbivores. A few foes lunged forward toward the existing Terran line, in an attempt to dissuade the friendly automatons from pushing ahead and capitalizing on our arrival. I was grateful that the vessels leading our own charge were the handful of reinforcement drones Zhao coughed up. I'd prefer they absorbed the worst of the hostile fire, rather than a ship with lives aboard. I didn't dislike the Yodel, and despite mistrusting their competency, that was a guilty by association view. I respect how they try to act brave, that's half of actually having bravado, yes. Of all the parties at the summit that heard my speech, only one ex-Fed was willing to work with me. With an enemy force engaged at a 90-degree angle to our approach vector, we pushed the thrusters to full burn. Numerous Kolshian craft had reoriented their weapons to face us, anticipating the greater threat of our flanking force raking their line. If the onboard programs were aware the lead commander was an Arxer, I suppose I'd been predictable. Our reputation indicated that I'd choose an aggressive course of action. Simple maneuvers amid a crowded battlefield were proven across eons. Attempting to outwit a machine with faster decision-making power was an exercise in futility, unless you were a delusional Terran. Their spontaneity and wild ideas were nothing if not unpredictable. It was both their genius and their derangement. Lisa's eyes were focused on our human allies. Sir, I recommend we keep our movement vectors clear of any friendly nanodrone swarms or shield breakers. With your permission, I'll keep combat stations apprised of such deployments and the affected radius. Good idea. 50 seconds to first volley. We are not to stumble into friendly munitions, but we will not shy away from engagement, yes? I hissed. Oleg cracked his knuckles. We're back where Lisa and I first met you, Chief Hunter. Those military black budgets had to turn up something useful, huh? Let's get it done. Subordinate Arxer on the bridge maintained submissive postures, though I could see a zeal for bringing down the Kolshians in many eyes. Nikonas had partnered with the oppressive Betterment Office to ensure that our kind would never seek peace. That was enough to spawn a growl from my own chest. With narrowed eyes and a surge of adrenaline, I soaked in every detail. The bulk of the Kolshian drones remained locked in their struggle with Terran opposites, and 13,000 rebel-controlled ships were barreling toward the enemy's poorly defended flank. Could Shadow Fleet drones withstand the initial onslaught, long enough for manned Kolshian reinforcements to reach them from Milo? Any commander knew there was nothing easy about overcoming 5 digits worth of ships. The drones under my oversight led the way, weaving through enemy fire with mechanical precision. Our armada glided behind them, as billowing explosions rocked the lines of both parties. My warship was insulated from the brunt of the fray, but we were vigilant for any munitions that slipped through the crack. Salvos of missiles were being traded like claw swipes, deflected or landing based on the receiving party's situational awareness. Debris littered the system from the months-long battle, and we were only adding to it. Disabled ships drifted helplessly along vectors from when maneuvering power was lost. Navigations, I'm forwarding hazards I've located to avoid collisions, Kaisal barked. Lisa's head snapped toward me. I haven't seen any shield breakers coming from the UN line, but they're pushing forward to take advantage of distraction. Many Kolshians have shield outages, so I can assume that occurred well before our arrival. I drew a measured breath. Thank you. Adjust trajectory as needed, and await my orders to fire on any important foes. Our vessel wove around the wreckage of an eviscerated enemy craft, and our plasma guns sizzled in wait of Kaisel's next target offering. The rebel ships weren't as nimble as hostile drones, but our heavy hitters packed more firepower. Twin railguns from warships scorched the flesh of nearby foes, taking advantage of the shields that were downed in lieu of our arrival. The Terran armada was surging forward all along the defensive line, rallied by the obvious devastation we'd sown. A pair of Kolshian drones collided, overwhelmed by the combined crossfire, and we were gift-wrapped an easy shot against another short-circuiting defender. I ensured my outward stoic professionalism, despite my internal celebration, as our plasma tore a gash in an enemy's circuitry. The Arxer portion of the plan was going swimmingly, but I noticed worrying movements in the wings. Rather than playing a supporting role, the Yodel had separated from our ranks and were spreading out across the Kolshian lines. Why were they breaking formation? Those herbivores should have let the predator militaries handle this. We couldn't have the humans' long-awaited chance to break through ruined by bumbling incompetence. With the feeling that I was watching a disaster in motion, I diverted my focus to the technocracy ships going off on their own. The Kolshians were bound to teach the marsupials a lesson in humility. Date, Standardized Human Time, March 5, 2137. The Yodel warships had split from our formation, and attracted the ire of the Kolshian drones. It was impressive, in a way, that herbivores were able to organize proper movements, but this demonstrated reckless abandon. These craft were fresh from learned shipyards, and weren't automated like the enemy. No biologic could reach decisions as quickly as a computer. Terrans could circumvent this by stumping the onboard programs with new technologies and strategies, yet it was absurd to anticipate exceptional advances from a vegetation-munching species who hadn't shown war mastery. The enemy drones swiveled their railguns with perfect precision, and plasma lances spooled out from the barrels as the Yodel drew close. The marsupials were unflinching. They seemed to be flying themselves directly into the weapon's path. Were these technocracy pilots suicidal, or did they assume out of inexperience that shields would prevent any damage from seeping through? My eyes zeroed in on one allied vessel, knowing I couldn't get my own people killed to bail out herbivores dabbling in stupidity. An arc of brilliance was racing to greet the vessel. which was forging ahead with no thought to self-preservation. The Jodel vessel was strangely shaped, looking more like a cube than a sleek, aerodynamic contraption. The blocky form made it more of a target, rather than one that could twirl away or place lengthy guns along a slender back. With an inbound munition hellbent on its demise, the technocracy ship bobbed as though riding a wave. The hull plating unclasped before my eyes, revealing a normal-looking craft below. The metal shell propelled itself into the plasma beam, immolated while the ejected fuselage remained intact. The outer layer acts as a decoy against the targeting systems, while the key mechanisms can break from the hold, the way primitive rockets detach stages after their purpose is fulfilled. Were humans involved with building these Jodel ships? The leaner boat released from within the shell had its weapons ready, though it wasn't utilizing traditional plasma, kinetics, or explosives. The Jodel's chosen weaponry was almost like a cannon protruding from its belly, but there was no trace of any visible munitions being fired. The flash was only perceptible as something struck the Kolshan drones, scorching their hull from the close-range vantage point. It was an invisible force which seemed to leap across space in an instant, like it was traveling close to light speed in real space. Without shields, the enemy was unprotected from the heat generated on my readout from the unseen impact. The enemy drone I was focused on wasn't alone in having its plating liquefied and the sensitive circuitry within fried in seconds. There was nothing the Kolshans could do to fight back or defend themselves. They were blindsided by this vicious innovation. Though our foe's initial count had been 10,000 strong, they were dropping like flies. With my rebels and the Terran line hounding them, the automatons began a hasty retreat. The disbelief over the Jodels showing was palpable on my bridge, and Arxer voices on the comms channels, chastising the marsupials for venturing off, had died down. Kaisal looked astonished. How could Prey have come up with a new weapon? What are they even doing? I do not know, but I see that the humans have not led us astray with their chosen reinforcements, I remarked. Oleg, Lisa, can you offer any insight on this development? Oleg whipped around, with his signature, I knew it, grin on his face. Particle beam weapons. This is what the death ray that melted the Grand Gulf reactor was. I looked into the proof a ton. We've had them since 1989. Charge up in a particle accelerator, shoot quantum shit at near light speed, and voila. Oleg is off in crazy land again, but he's right about what it is, according to my contacts, Lisa sighed. The Jodel worked closely with the UN on their shipbuilding, and apparently, were able to make a feasible ion cannon. Unlike lasers, a particle beam can't be reflected, and even with shields up, the charged particles disrupt the current. Kaisal relaxed his posture. I see. It is a human development that you gave the Prey, because you do foolish things like that. We worked hand in hand on this, just like, you know who we worked in tandem with, when we came up with shield disruptors? The Jodel. They've been excellent, not only to bounce ideas off of, but to expand on what we give them. Perhaps these herbivores are more capable than any of us assumed. Humanity always had an ability to see a species for what they really are. It is remarkable, this makes taking Milo much more feasible. With less worry bogging down my heart over the Arxer lives that would be lost in the battle, I ordered our vessels to press the advantage. The Kolshans had given up fending off the Terrans they'd been stalemated with, and were getting overrun as they retreated. The Jodel took a few hits, despite their crafty countermeasures, but their particle beams also rendered missiles lobbed at them useless. More than once, I saw warheads erupt well before their intended target, picked off like Sciasaras in a riverbank. The particle accelerators didn't seem to have the cooldown requirement that standard plasma weapons did either. The Kolshans fired off parting shots. As their numbers dwindled, few enemies had escaped the Jodel's invisible net, with their ships disabled within seconds. Our weapons station was scouring for stragglers, and I saw our gunners take some iffy shots in the hopes of scoring kills. The Arxer vessels had been outshone, though our sheer numbers helped to clean up any remaining foes. However, there was still a chance to test our prowess by Milo itself. I wouldn't expect the resounding success we'd had against the battle line, now that particle beams weren't a surprise. Still, with my 13,000 ships and the Terran's long-present drones, there was a good chance we could come out ahead. "There's 40,000 ships total," I announced. "So there's loads more waiting at Milo's heart, and foot soldiers occupying the land. Let's go hunt them down." Kaisal issued an awkward tail lash. What should we say to the yodel, sir?" "I'll handle it." I switched on my microphone, tuning into the joint comms for a brief second. "This is Chief Hunter Isif. I wanted to congratulate the Yodel technocracy on a well-fought battle. Might I add, we are delighted that you are on our side." A few barks of laughter came in response. So much for being primitives that are beneath the wider galaxy. The Yodel will never be mocked or taken for granted by anyone, after today. We'll lead the way to Milo. You deserve to champion the hunt. I shall be quite pleased when the Dosur are fully liberated, and only then, but I wish to acknowledge your display of acumen. Good fortune. I switched off my transmitter, and did a brief survey of my bridge team. There had been a handful of grumbles when I agreed to let the herbivores lead, but it was the Arxer way for the strongest to take charge. I disliked that the newcomers to the galaxy already had a leg up on my fleet, though I didn't expect Zhao to work so closely to provide us weapons. The waters were muddied, in terms of any relations between humanity and us. We couldn't afford to be complacent anymore. A new goal of the rebellion needed to be what the Yodel and the Terrans had achieved, bringing together scientists that could innovate and grow our technology. We did it once, before science was a distorted field and we were steered toward a forever war. Giznoll didn't want us to get stronger, but I wished to see us victorious. Technology could be a key field in helping us best the Dominion, if we can't get the Terrans help soon enough. My ragtag band of rebel ships immobilized behind the Yodel craft, the detachable, blocky layers the marsupials had sported were gone, but having lost only a few dozen ships, I trusted them to find new ways to stay effective. Kaisal was busy combing sensors, as Olek turned the focus of the comms array to broadcasts from the planet. I squinted at the scruffy human, whose expression had shifted in an instant. Knowing we had time before reaching the system's heart, I wandered over to his station to peek at his viewing materials. "What is this issue, Olek?" I asked. The human pursed his lips. "Sir, the Dosur are claiming they have control of their broadcast channels again. The Kolshians packed up shop and just left the occupation, with quite a few local prisoners in tow. Apparently, they targeted troublemakers." Lisa cleared her throat, while absent-mindedly fiddling with her brown locks. "I'm hearing the same thing. My UN contacts are telling me that the local government re-established contact, and that they're being apprised of Ambassador Aller's decision to join the Sapient Coalition." "I see. The Kolshians are fleeing, surrendering the planet, and acknowledging they lost?" I hissed. "That is excellent news. Felra will be pleased. There's not much we can do about the Dosur prisoners, but there's no way the enemy can initiate a total evacuation and vacate the system before we get there. Perhaps the Yodel can disable and board the prisoner ships, and..." "Sorry to interrupt, but that's the thing, sir. It seems they started making preparations to leave, and left, days ago," Olek mumbled. Kaisal smacked his tail on the floor. "I've adjusted the sensor settings, and observed the breadth of the planet's spaceports on the viewport, at maximum magnification. There's not a trace of any Kolshian ships left here, sir. I can detect some subspace trails, suggesting they left within the hour. Milo is free." I narrowed my eyes. That does not make sense. They started leaving days in advance of our arrival. The Kolshians would not have expected a thorough trouncing. It must have been some ulterior motive, yes. The fact that they continued to hold us at bay is telling, Lisa mused aloud. They didn't want us to know they were gone, we're only picking up communications now, so the drones were jamming various channels. Why keep up the illusion, unless you don't want humanity to know your 30,000 ships have relocated? Oleg's brown eyes widened with realization. Holy shit. They left because they were given orders to attack somewhere else. The question is, where have they gone? I haven't a clue, but I suggest we relay a warning to the United Nations. My head turned toward Oleg, and the human seemed to pick up on the message to open a channel. Your intelligence may have a better idea of this, yes? It is also your jurisdiction how to proceed. With Milo freed, Zhao will wish to hear of our success. Already on it, sir. Give me a moment. I did my best to avoid crowding the male human, though I was impatient for him to pass me along to the Secretary General. With this new information in mind, there were decisions to be made about what roles the rebel fleet should play. From what Kaisal imparted, we had just missed intercepting the Kolshians. Since they had warped out mere hours before, we could follow the subspace trails and see where they led. The goal of this mission was already accomplished, with Felra's world liberated, but I was torn over whether to intervene. Zhao's words from our conversation about the war plans were still fresh on my mind. Should the tables turn at Milo, I imagine the Kolshians are biding their time to hit human territory. We know they want to cure us, so I'd find the use of biological weapons against a civilian populace likely, the Secretary General had said. The last thing that Earth wanted was a repeat of the months-long hostage situation in this system, but with human prisoners in tow. Regardless of what actions I would personally take, I needed to pass along a warning about Zhao's speculation looking more like prophecy. Perhaps the death of Nikonas had accelerated the Kolshians' aggressive timeline, or perhaps his successor carried out what was already planned. Either way, Venlo Prime and Earth should be on their guard for any incursions. I donned a look of seriousness, as Oleg beckoned me over to the screen. The Secretary General was staring back with interest in his brown eyes. Hello, Isif. I hear your mission at Milo has been a massive success. I've been in touch with the Zeruleans, and their doctors and aid workers are en route from Kolia, Zhao said. However, I'm hearing that the Kolshians left before your arrival. I chuckled. As usual, you know things before they have been relayed, General Jones' department, yes? In this instance, it was simple enough to piece together a timeline of events, with Milo able to reach out to us. We've been in communication with our people aboard your ship too. Regardless, congratulations on your success. There are many bright-eyed humans toasting your accomplishments back here on Earth. The United Nations appreciates your help. We would have sent more to fight alongside you, but we're stretched thin. I know, Mr. Secretary General. I'm not sure I ever misjudged someone so thoroughly as I did the Yodel. You sent us worthy fighters. That was enough aid, and it pains me to profess, but it was the reason for our success. I wish to get in contact to apprise you of these developments, and also to warn you that the Kolshians may have left to attack another target. It should be seen to that Venlo Prime, Earth, and anywhere else that is strategically important to humans is vigilant. I swore a promise that not one more civilian would perish on Earth, not under my watch. 20% of the deaths during the attack were in my home nation. I lost family, like many other people, and for that, I will do anything to protect Earth. I have done everything I could think of to protect Sol, and there are no lines I wouldn't cross to keep us safe. Skalga is also under our umbrella of protection. The Venlil are treasured by humanity. You need not worry. Good. I do not know whether I should pursue the Kolshians and offer aid. Zhao's eyes, which had darkened during his previous remarks, rolled back in thought. Isif, you've done as much as you promised to do. I won't ask any more of you. If you wish to help, we'd welcome your assistance, and your swift response time could make a difference. The Yodel have already agreed to chase the subspace trails, and continue the battle wherever the Kolshians have gone. What course of action do you wish to pursue? That depends on where they are attacking. Do you have any guesses? I have a sneaking suspicion, but I genuinely have no desire to manipulate you. Please, whatever my colleagues might do, know that I respect your goals and autonomy. You are blunt and forthright with your aims. I find that to be a respectable quality in most instances, except when your aims are perpendicular to my own. Fortunately, we find ourselves in agreement for our peaceful aspirations, is that not correct? We both seek a long-lasting peace, for all species. First off, I don't know this, it's based off my interpretation of the data. My best guess for where the Kolshians are heading is Liberty's bastion, since to the Federation, it symbolizes predator expansion outside our own space. The human's words caused my heart rate to spike, hearing that my Dosur friend was in the line of fire again. To be clear, I've asked for the Mazik patrollers to fortify our defenses, and we're moving colonists off-world. Now, before you worry about Felra, I got in touch with her hosts and evacuated them. You don't need to swoop in and rescue her. Why would you bring my friend to safety, before tending to your people? Felra doesn't take a spot from a human. She's tiny, she can fit in a cup holder. You could have left the Dosur there, and manipulated me into helping. It would benefit you strategically. I don't want to win that way, or to treat humanity's friends as tools. Like I told you on Earth, moral principles give you integrity, but you can't just hold on to them when it's easy or beneficial. I won't abuse emotions or use lives as bartering chips. Remarkable. Zhao could have all but ensured that I would show up at Liberty's bastion, but he chose to get Felra to safety. The Dosur means a lot to me, so perhaps I do owe him a favor in return. I dipped my head in gratitude. Thank you. I'll have my fleet follow the subspace trails with haste. We'll chase the Kolshians to Liberty's bastion or wherever they may be heading. Your aid is appreciated. I promise I'll remember this, when it's time for us to bring our full might to your side. You may not be a member of the Sapient Coalition, ISIF, but you're just as much of an ally. I desire for you to win. I desire for the Federation to lose even more. Where I'm from, we call that spite. We'll bring their leaders to their knees before the sun sets on this war. There's no stopping what's in motion now. I have faith in your abilities. I will be in touch if we have additional intel, or if we need to converse with UN forces at our destination. Take care, and fight well, Secretary General Zhao. Just Mingza is fine. We're friends. You called Elias by his first name, didn't you? Actually, I referred to Elias Meyer as the sum of his two full names. Human nomenclature is most confusing to the uninitiated. The Terran general chuckled. I see how it could be confusing. Regardless, I won't waste any more of your time. I know you've got to be present while you track those assholes down. Take care and fight well yourself. The arboreal alien disconnected from the call, and I swept a gaze around the bridge. While I was certain the Arxer crew had overheard the bulk of our conversation, there didn't seem to be any objections over following the Kolshians. We were fortunate to escape Milo with few casualties, largely thanks to the Yodel stepping up. However, we didn't want to be outshone by plant-eating marsupials, who were willing to come to Earth's aid as often as needed. My goal was to make a positive impression on the United Nations, and I also could respect that they had taken the honorable road with Felra. Altruism was a novel concept, but it was worth it to attempt to reciprocate the kind gesture. The rebel fleet pressed closer to Milo's inner sanctum, and we locked onto the subspace trails left by the fleeing Kolshians. Wherever the Federation planned to strike, my forces would help prevent them from getting their tentacles on any other humans. If there was one thing the Terrans had in common with my entire race, it was that we both had no interest in being cured.